My first question actually is for John. I just wanted to know if you could sum up briefly what you and Muse are working on together.
Salford Council and Muse have been working with partners ECF on everything central Salford for probably about 15 years now. And that's all about a long-term vision for primarily a commercial redevelopment of the edge of city centre. So it's delivered about 2 million square feet of commercial space in that time period, and 11,000 jobs. It's also delivered hotel, multi-storey car parking, and smaller scale residential as well, getting on for about 1,000 units in the city. So it's made a substantial groundbreaking change in the city in that 15 years or so period.
And how are you guys incorporating the net zero agenda in on these?
What we're particularly proud of in the partnership with the council is that we've responded to things as they've grown and as necessity has become clearer, and net zero is one of those. So we're currently on site with a highly sustainable new office development called Eden. It's 125,000 square feet, and it'll have the largest living green wall in Europe. Now, you might look at that in itself and say, well, okay, well, but what does that do? Other than, I guess, signpost its green credentials. It does a huge amount more than that. That's about taking the vegetation and the like, and actually gives a thermal mass to the building, so it means that the heating and running costs are a lot cheaper, but it's also situated right on the inner relief route, and the plants will remove toxins from the air. So if you bear in mind the previous use of the site was a car park, so there is of course disruption with building a building, so there'll be an increase resulting from that, but then over time, over the lifespan of the building, it will give a positive contribution to the environment.
I feel like what's great about that is so often when we have discussions about making developments more sustainable, people go, that's great, I really want to do that, but that's just an extra cost I have to factor in. And you have, at Eden, as you mentioned, it's turned into an asset that you're using it to help solve a problem as well as a carbon issue. How does that kind of work when you guys are working in partnership? I mean, is Salford City Council being like, this is our directive, we want to do this? Is it more working together? How does that happen?
Critically, and this is where I think it really plays back to the political angle and making sure that we achieve things together, that there's a wider remit than just property values. It's going to deliver homes that are typically 80 to 90% have lower running costs, energy running costs, right in the place and right for the people that need it. Whereas you'd expect another place, passive house will be delivered for people because there's a cost to it that actually don't necessarily need those lower energy costs. They obviously welcome it. We should drive that across the board. But being able to focus that, you wouldn't do that without this partnership approach at all.
And I think that's another example. A criticism often levied at these kind of long-term schemes is about gentrification, isn't it? So if you look at that scheme in particular, affordable homes right in the heart of the city centre, really low energy costs. That's not gentrification, is it? That's doing something differently. That's arguably doing something the Salford way, which is it's not just about sustainability, it's about inclusion and about growth.
What do you guys feel like you've learned from the partnership thus far?
For me, you can't deliver these kind of quality schemes and these difficult schemes at the time. Going back 15 years, these were brownfield car park sites that didn't have any future, seemingly. And so having that long-term relationship as opposed to a long-term relationship with a vision and a long-term plan, as opposed to spot developments. And spot developments don't work. You're not going to get good quality public realm around it. You're not going to get these quality developments in terms of sustainability without this long-term approach.
I think there's again, traditionally, partnerships like this have been centred around a document that's usually about 100 pages thick, a development agreement. And that's necessary, that frames the relationship, if you like. You can almost call it the marriage certificate. It sits on itself, but you don't go and look at that again. What you do is you then look at the vision and then you start to work towards that.
What lesson do you feel like other councils can learn from your partnership?
Individuals come and go, but that clarity of purpose is really, really important. Now, it so happens in Salford that that's a consistent political lead. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. Other places have very strong cross-party collaboration. But if I never go into a meeting with colleagues at Salford and not be very clear on what they want to achieve. And then I know what my job is then, to try and help deliver that. And if you've got those two ingredients, the rest can follow. There's a whole host of things after that, like believing in the place. So when we started Salford Central, you would have looked at it and said, I can't see I can invest a penny here because the returns aren't there. But you've got to have belief in what you're trying to achieve and invest sensibly in design work and the like to make sure that you're ready to deliver when the time comes, because those little pieces of those jigsaws, of the jigsaw, actually sit in amongst those 30 or so phases that John references. But stability and clarity of purpose are the critical things.
Well, a long-term partnership's about win-win, isn't it? And you can't have this win-lose relationship. It's got to be win-win. And you might make very short-term compromises to look at the medium and long-term approach, but ultimately that long-term win-win is about producing and realising that vision. And having a 150-page master plan and a 100-page partnership agreement, they hopefully pretty much sit on the shelf.
I think you guys did answer this question, so I'm going to caveat it with that. But how do you make sure that net zero doesn't get lost as you're building these developments?
I think it's about making the right choices. So it can't. Well, frankly, it can't get lost because, for a start, let's just be very, very clear about where we're going. There will be buildings that will be becoming obsolete in not the too distant future because they can't meet the requisite EPC ratings and the like from an energy point of view. And you have to forgive me, sometimes I'll mix up low energy with net zero carbon, but there's clearly a strong correlation. So, but there will be buildings that will be coming to the end of the useful life that will need to be repurposed and like so. Already investors, and when I say investors, I'm talking about not just pension funds, but people buying the first homes. Already they're building that into their assessment of whether to acquire. Now, that in due course could end up translating into value increases, it may not, but what you certainly don't want to be doing is developing a product, and a lot of the buildings, don't forget, will take 18 months, 2 years from actually start on site before you know who your customer's going to be, particularly on open market residential. So you've got to deliver it, so you can't lose it, or else you're building a product that there's a real risk that somebody won't want.
Is there a certain project that's going on right now that is particularly exciting for you? I know it's like picking, your favorite child, but I'm going to make you do it because everyone does have a favorite child. Let's be honest. So, what is your favorite project going on right now in Salford?
Eden's got to be. In itself, it looks stunning at the moment, but you've got to bear in mind that it's a seasonal wall that, with a mix of plants, will give it colour and greenery all year round. But as we come into summer, it's got things like wild strawberries in there, English thyme, and that the birds will feed on. So it will be something really quite special. I think people are getting a view of the building now, but it will mature into something that is really, really quite stunning. And people haven't really done it before. It's been done in pieces. It's been done in relatively benign environments, but of this scale, where people are living and working in the building, I think is something else. So
I think being directly on the ring road, it will be a landmark building of the future. Yeah. I think it genuinely will be, won't it?
Thank you so much, John and Phil, for joining me today. And if you want to know more about what's going on in Salford and across the Northwest, go to placenorthwest.co.uk.